talk today about Jeffrey Epstein and how he has affected my consciousness and my understanding of the world. When I first came to knowledge of that name, it was last summer, and similar to the news of this virus coming in January in the news, I was very skeptical. And who wouldn't be when the news lies more than it tells the truth? But one thing that really stuck out for me was when Sean correctly predicted Epstein's death, and the whole case just seemed to explode after that. But I still wasn't completely hooked. It happened very slowly, and I just started to read more and more about it. And while I was visiting family in Italy, I just dove into it. Just started watching videos, reading articles about it. The process of dealing with that information has been very up and down, and there are different phases that I went through. At first, it was skepticism, of course, and then bewilderment and shock once I realized that this was true. But not only that, it was just the whole world. It wasn't just Mr. Jeffrey. It was other people who partake in this trafficking and have done so, and particularly in the UK. Did a lot of research there. I eventually went through another stage of misanthropy and just having a really misanthropic, cynical view of the world, which transitioned into a depression as I struggled to understand how adults could forget what it's like to be a child. Frustration and indignance at the fact that there are two standards in the world, one for the elite and one for us. Anger, I think righteous anger after the fact, probably one of the last stages I think that I went through, along with acceptance that these sort of things go on. So then the next question is, what do you do about it? What can I do about it? Or what can anyone do about it? Well, I think just talking about it is the first and most important step at this point. It's such an uncomfortable topic that I don't think many people would want to discuss this with their family. I mean, this is difficult for adults to talk about with each other, let alone for an adult to speak about this with a child and warn them about predators and how these people do exist. Yeah, it wasn't just that, though. It was also, I think, a newfound sense of patriotism as well, in the sense that I was upset when I found out that someone who is an American was selling secrets to a foreign state. Science secrets, financial secrets. I mean, this is treason. This is a betrayal of my country. Our country. It was one of those watershed moments for me psychologically, as I said earlier, as well, in terms of my consciousness. Very similar to the idea of the red pill in the Matrix, in the sense that once you learn this information and once you understand it is true, and you comprehend that these things do happen. And not only do they happen, but they happen in a very organized, meticulous, systematic, multinational, and intergovernmental way. So how do you talk about this with somebody who's never even thought about it, or who doesn't care, or who is skeptical of the validity of these accusations? I don't know. That might be a waste of time. I think it's better to just try to find people on the internet to talk about it with, because talking about these things can create relationship conflict if you aren't careful about how you go about speaking on it. I think that's one thing to keep in mind as well, and one reason why I'm much more open to speaking about these things with people I've never met, because that prospect of ruining or negatively affecting my relationship with someone isn't there, because I don't know the person, right? So we can connect on an intellectual level without regard for any personal relationship that we may have, which I think is great. Finding that commonplace for people to intellectually share a common ground of curiosity. And this particular topic, I think, piques everyone's curiosity. Eric Weinstein was talking about this, how every little scrap is interesting to everyone. And with this situation that we find ourselves in worldwide, it has provided a huge distraction from this scandal, this organization, this system. I hope that people don't forget about that as well, because I do know that this is a tough time for everyone. But that being said, I think important issues, activist issues, and justice and lack of justice shouldn't be forgotten because of this pandemic. It's interesting. I was listening to Anna Breeze, the journalist from the United Kingdom, speak about something which resonated very deeply with me as it pertains to Mr. Epstein. And she said, if there is no trust in the media, what happens next? If you can't believe anything the media says, it's anarchy. And she said that she fears this. And it does seem like we are heading that way because of this lack of media trust. But I think that's why the importance of this new media is so great. But as it pertains to Mr. Jeffrey, she used an analogy as it relates to media trust of a relationship with somebody, friend or otherwise, where hypothetically you find out that this person isn't entirely who they say they are in one way or another. Now, that sentence right there can mean different things to different people, which will all affect individuals differently. But it causes you to question something like that, especially if it's huge. Like if you find out someone you know has been living a double life, you would question everything in your life after that, especially if this person was close to you. And she described it so well in that way. I think it was such a great analogy because this describes it exactly. I think for me, what was going on with my relationship with the media, it's it was so great and so strong that I began to question the very nature of science and everything I've ever learned, to be honest. It was almost like a back to the basics ego dissolution, where it's like, if I can't trust the media to speak about this, what have I been learning? What have I been listening to? What have I been reading the last few years? And I began to realize I have no idea what's going on. And going back to the relationship metaphor, what if these things happen to you at the same time? That's even more of a mind fuck. Like, your realization that the media has been lying to you all this time, combined with someone in your life who's been lying to you all this time, it makes you question the very basis of a large portion of your reality. And that really affects people, and it really affected me. So it also made me realize, Mr. Jeff here, the debacle of Mr. Jeffrey, shall we say, that I needed to reevaluate the way I thought about information that was coming into my consciousness, in my brain, and my relationship with the media at large as well. I think another thing it also did was it made me realize that there is a limit to the American dream, a ceiling for most people. And there is a big club. And if you ain't in it, you're not going to get in it. And this thing, I didn't know either. So, realizing that this big club, which Mr. Jeff was in, is a club that has a lot to do with running the world, and the chances of someone working their way to get in it is just, it's not really possible, barring any sort of discovery, like or unless you become a billionaire, right? Which is like, unless you're the next Bill Gates, which most of us will not be, you're not getting in this club. But who's to say it's the club that you want to get into anyways? These people, it must be stopped.